So last night in our Awakening Hearts Non-Duality Self-Inquiry course, someone asked about spiritual bypassing, and it came right at the end of our class. So I thought this needs a more in-depth answer. So what is spiritual bypassing to begin with? And it's a tendency which I see in a lot of spiritual circles, and it's not helpful. And what it can express as is a tendency to overly focus on the positive and suppress and ignore our true feelings, our inner pain, and deny what perhaps is being activated or triggered in our interaction in life. And it was a term that was actually developed by John Welwood, a Buddhist teacher and psychotherapist. And he defined it as a tendency to our spiritual ideas and practices to sidestep and avoid facing unresolved emotional issues, psychological wounds, and unfinished developmental tasks. And we see this sometimes where we just completely ignore our feelings. We're seeing it projected a lot on social media, where often coaches or people that are trying to build a personal profile, they only post themselves as their best self. They're looking fantastic, they've got the perfect body, and of course they're probably using some filters to project that as well, so they don't have wrinkles, etc. And everything they share is perfect. Yet perhaps behind that they're suffering. In their everyday life, there might be a tendency towards lack or victimhood, or a desire to be something that they actually don't feel they are. So that's one example of it. But very much so, we can go through life and deny how we're really feeling. For instance, perhaps if we, and this is an example, we might have grown up and not received the love that we really needed and the safety that we really needed as a baby and a small child, or perhaps a teenager. There might have been violence, or there might have just been a lack of love and a lack of care there. So we may, in that childlike mind, take on the belief, obviously not consciously, that I'm unlovable, or that love is inaccessible for me. And then go on in life and not be able to form deep, meaningful, loving relationships or allow love into our lives because of that underlying hidden belief that I'm not lovable. That's one example. And of course, then bypassing that, focusing on the positive all the time, but never actually allowing ourselves to be loved or to process that deep pain that may be held around from the inner child that didn't receive the love that they needed. So in our self-inquiry, meditation and way of living, it is actually about shining the light on all that holds us back from knowing the deeper sense of I am, that is prior to these deep, often unconscious beliefs that we take on, our pain from living in this duality, this world. The direct path takes us straight to, I am presence, acknowledging that I am the same here as is there. I am that divine spark expressing through this human body in this world of duality. However, the long path, which often precedes this direct path, is acknowledging our pain, acknowledging what is unconsciously holding us back from allowing and opening to love in a deep way. And this may be letting go of a sense of victimhood. It might be acknowledging that we've been closing off from our feelings, allowing those feelings to be expressed and shining the light of awareness on those deep emotions that are holding us stuck. Another example, I'll use myself in this example, is when I went through the grief of losing my son to suicide. There was deep, deep grief, and that pain of my attachment to having my son in my life, my attachment to seeing him grow up and heal, etc. I had to really feel that pain, to acknowledge that grief, to allow grief in, and to work through that grief until I could reach a point of acceptance of the way it was and the way his life and my life played out. And of course, very much associated with suicide is shame. So there was a lot of shame that came up. Maybe I'm a bad mother. What could I have done better, etc. And self-flagellation even came up for me. And that was undeniable. I had to shine the light of awareness on that as well and go to the depth of my grief and pain around that and acknowledge truth around that. And in processing all of that, allow a deep healing and an acknowledgement of, the divine spark here, the divine spark there, and the fact that we are in a world of duality, and there is life and death of the physical body. And as much as we like to say we're completely attached, non-attached, attachment does happen. And really coming to terms with everything, every little nuance, feeling, emotion, and belief around all of that, not denying anything, not spiritually bypassing and go and always focusing on the positive and denying the deep feelings that come up. And we always receive an opportunity to see what's there deep within ourselves when we become triggered. So be aware in your daily life. Start to notice, wow, I was triggered by that. And rather than then blaming the other person and becoming angry or becoming a blaming, unforgiving, etc., and directing it out there, whenever we're triggered in life, it's an opportunity to look within. What is it here that reacted to that? What is that pointing to in me that's unresolved? And it may be simply accepting, stepping off rigid beliefs and opening to life as it is. So I feel that this is a very deep and important subject, and we need to be ready for this direct path. And with the direct path pointing to the I am presence, the pure self, the awakening of the heart and dropping into the heart of awareness, that can happen alongside processing unresolved aspects of your life. Not attaching to the story of my life, not becoming a victim, not becoming an oppressor, not taking a position which is justifying our own pain, but feeling it, allowing it to be processed, and ultimately being completely released from it. And that can take time. There's many, many deep, unprocessed emotions and aspects to our life. And shining the light of awareness here with love, with self-compassion, with self-kindness, seeking the truth without blame, without shame, being really honest. And truth is one of the highest ways that we can free ourselves. But knowing also that whatever's there also can be released. And we can be freed from the chains that have shackled us with untrue beliefs, untrue and denied aspects of our own shadow. So there's a lot to spiritual bypassing, and in no way is the work here offered on the Awakening Hearts platform pointing you toward focusing on the positive constantly and denying the truth of what is showing up in your life undeniably. And we'll see that through our interaction with life, and when we feel triggered, when we feel defensive, perhaps when we feel angry, when we start to blame and shame others or ourselves. So we need to do the work. And that's why here on this platform, I also offer the TRE somatic work, where we talk about the nervous system and releasing somatically bodily held patterns as well, where I talk about how we can down-regulate the nervous system and come into a state of parasympathetic, so that we're not living in a sympathetic state where the nervous system is always switched on, and we're living in that state of agitation or either depression or anxiety all the time. When we go into our daily meditation of sitting in silence, of sitting in that state of beingness, often, we'll find that the mind train becomes more and more activated, and emotions will arise. Being with all of that, allowing all of that to be as it is, but not jumping on that mind train, not dwelling in the emotions, but acknowledging that that's what is there. And then through this deep inner silence, we may then begin to know in our daily life, I noticed that pain was there, that I felt that in my body, and it was preventing me from really dropping into a sense of being. I need to work with that. That's a pointer for me to shine the light of awareness and bring some truth and some healing into that. So I hope that this is helpful, and please, again, leave your questions and comments below. We're all exploring together here. I am no exception. You know, there's been a lot of deep work that's happened here, and once we acknowledge the I am presence and we rest in this beautiful sense of being, it doesn't mean that's a permanent situation. That's always and ever available, but we can get pulled back by unresolved emotional trauma again and again into being the victim or the oppressor or whatever shadow is arising for us. So the presence of the heart, of sitting in the true self, into the heart of awareness, that's always and ever available for us. But if we're continually being pulled back into our trauma, that also needs to be healed, acknowledged, so that we can rest here more deeply, more easily. I hope this is helpful. Namaste.